Hi, I'm Isolde. 12 hours before I was supposed to walk across a stage in my cap and gown, my father left a note on the kitchen counter. No conversation, no eye contact, just 7 words scribbled in pen. Graduation's canceled. Expect court papers. I didn't cry. I packed my bag in silence. But here's the part no one expected. When I opened my records, my name was already gone. My thesis, replaced. My voice, rewritten. My photo, swapped for my sister's. My place in this family, erased, before I ever had a chance to claim it. What kind of father stages a legal ambush against his own daughter the day before her graduation? And what kind of family calls that love? You want to hear what happened in the 12 hours that followed? I was supposed to pick up my gown. That was the only item left on my list. One last errand before the final week. The day had been meticulously planned, right down to my coffee order. I even allowed myself a small smile when the barista got my name right. It felt like everything was clicking into place, like the version of myself I'd been building, brick by brick, was finally ready to step forward. When I pulled into my father's driveway, the street was quiet, as usual. Neatly trimmed hedges, driveways rinsed to perfection, and that ever-present hum of quiet judgment the neighborhood seemed to inhale. I entered through the side door. No need to knock. I'd done this 1,000 times before. The first sign that something was off was the silence. The second was the air. It carried a strange stillness, like something was holding its breath. No clink of a teacup, no distant shuffle of TV channels, just the sound of my own shoes on tile. And then I saw it. A single sheet of paper, folded once, sitting dead center on the kitchen counter. No envelope, no salutation. Just 7 words scribbled in my father's unmistakable blocky print. Graduation's canceled. Expect court papers. That was it. Nothing more. Not even a "love, Dad." Not even a date. I stared at it long enough for the ink to blur slightly in my vision, but the words didn't change. I didn't pick it up, didn't fold it. I just stood there, listening to nothing, feeling nothing, until the cold edge of the countertop reminded me I still had a body that needed support. Not even a phone call, I muttered, voice low. Just ink. Like I'm a problem to be managed. I grabbed my phone out of reflex. My fingers moved faster than my thoughts. Opened my bank app, not because I expected trouble, but because I'd learned to check things when life suddenly veered left. That's when the second blow landed. My education account was frozen. The same account my father co-managed, supposedly for security and transparency. The message on the screen was clear. Access denied. Authorization revoked by co-owner. I tapped the contact button. It rang once before a voice answered, pleasant and mechanical. Thank you for calling Whitestone Financial. How may I assist you today? I tried to keep my voice steady. Hi, I'm trying to access a co-managed account ending in 4720. It says authorization has been revoked. One moment, please. The typing on the other end felt clinical, almost detached. Yes, that account was adjusted this morning. Authorization was revoked by the secondary party. That would be Mr. Arthur Grath, correct? Correct. Sometimes survival isn't rage, it's restraint. I thanked her. I hung up. And I left the note where I found it, as untouched as I now felt. The drive back to my apartment was quiet. The roads were nearly empty. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't cry. I didn't even think. I just watched the city blur past, as if it might rearrange itself into something kinder if I kept my eyes on the horizon. When I got home, I didn't take off my shoes. I dropped my keys on the counter, made a cup of tea I wouldn't drink, and sat on the floor with my back against the cabinet. The silence inside the apartment didn't comfort me like it usually did. It felt loaded now, like it was waiting to see if I'd break. Instead, I reached for my laptop. My desktop loaded slowly, as if it too were hesitating. I opened the folder labeled Thesis Final. My name was still on the file, my edits still intact. For now. That word held more weight than it should have. For now. A flash of memory surfaced, my last real conversation with my father. You're too public about private matters, Isolde. It wasn't advice. It was a warning. A coded way of saying, we don't deal with things in the open. We contain. We preserve the image. But here I was, with a scribbled note threatening legal action and a locked bank account, all because I wanted to speak. All because I thought I could live honestly. I opened my email, scrolled through the archive. I found it within seconds. A message from him sent 6 months ago. We're proud of your independence. This family will always support your next step. I copied the email, saved it into a new folder on my desktop, labeled it simply Evidence. I stared at the folder for a while, not because I questioned its necessity, but because I knew this was no longer just a setback. This was strategy. They didn't want to talk. They wanted me gone, quietly, as if I'd never applied, never studied, never existed as someone who could represent them. I got up, walked to the small suitcase I kept in the closet for overnight trips. No deliberation, no pacing, just movement. I opened drawers, grabbed clothes without much care, folded them with a precision I didn't feel. Click. The zipper sounded louder than it should have. 12 hours. That's all I needed to shift the ground back under my feet, because in those 12 hours, I watched myself vanish from a moment I was meant to own. The morning light cut through the blinds in my kitchen, casting long shadows over a table that still held my untouched tea from the night before. I hadn't slept. I didn't expect to. The suitcase sat by the door, half-packed, waiting for some version of me that might need it. But I didn't move. I just sat there, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the Brown University homepage. I tapped the link to the commencement program. They hadn't even hidden it. Right there under valedictorian remarks, it read, Bryn Calloway, not a typo, not a placeholder. My cousin, in full. Below that, the program's family recognition line read, Bryn will receive the ceremonial ribbon on behalf of the Grath family. I felt my stomach shift, like my body knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. Bryn wasn't even supposed to be graduating this year, let alone representing our entire family at a ceremony that had been mine to lead. My name wasn't just missing, it had been overwritten. The last name was the same, but everything else had been stolen. I clicked into the RSVP section, something I hadn't checked in days. There, next to my name, wasn't the word graduate, or even speaker. It read, Family Support Assistant. Assistant. Like I was there to pass out pamphlets or refill the coffee trays. Like I hadn't spent the last 4 years building a platform big enough for our family name to stand on. I forwarded the document to myself, attached it to the folder I had started the night before, and gave it a new name, Proof of Reassignment. A line from a book popped into my head, something I'd read years ago but never forgot. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And yet, somehow, that's exactly what I'd done. Burned my identity to keep their legacy glowing. A text popped up. Layla, my old roommate. Hey, weird question. Thought you were graduating? Why's Bryn in your spot? I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I clicked the university's Instagram page, already knowing what I'd find. There she was. Bryn, in a navy blue cap and gown, her blonde curls styled perfectly, makeup camera ready. Her caption read, The Grath Legacy Continues. Complete with a sparkle emoji. Legacy, my ass. I hit download. Saved the photo in the folder. Dragged it right beneath the RSVP screenshot, and stared at the collection now forming, like pieces of a puzzle I never asked to build, but couldn't afford to ignore. That's when the email came in. Subject, Graduation Program Update. I opened it with the same numbness I'd had since last night. It was generic, cold, clearly written by someone who had no idea they were delivering a bullet. Thank you for your prior involvement. Your contributions have helped the program succeed. Best of luck on your journey. No mention of my title. No reason for the change. Just a goodbye dressed as gratitude. The assistant who sent it? She'd been the one who asked me to deliver the keynote 3 months ago. She'd called it a perfect fit. I didn't scream. I didn't call. I just forwarded it to Morgan. my friend from law school, and typed one line beneath the subject. Is this actionable? I printed the email, took out a highlighter, and marked one sentence in yellow. As we welcome Bryn Calloway as the face of our program. Then I folded the paper clean, tucked it into a blank envelope, and stared at it like it might speak. I wasn't just left out. I was written out, in advance. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't spontaneous, it was rehearsed. That thought sat with me the entire train ride to campus, its weight growing heavier with every passing mile. I wasn't going to meet with anyone. I wasn't there to reclaim a moment. I knew that was gone. I was there for records, for traces, for proof. Brown's Media Archive Center was tucked behind the old library, a corner no one visited unless they were chasing ghosts. I knew the walk by heart. Every creaking tile and uneven step reminded me of sophomore year, the year I'd been featured in a campus spotlight series called Voices of the Future. Back then, I'd believed it meant something. I walked up to the front desk, where a tech assistant, barely older than some freshman, gave me a polite nod. Can I help you? Yes. I'm looking for a digital copy of the Voices series, specifically the episode from fall semester 2019, the Grath feature. He clicked around for a moment, his eyes scanning screens I couldn't see. He said. You sure it was under your name? Yes, Isolde Venn. I was the student featured that week. He frowned. That segment exists, but I'm not seeing your interview. Looks like the file was restructured and retagged. It might have been merged with a group session or archived under a different classification. I leaned forward. Is there a raw version? Maybe. But those are video archives. Takes time to retrieve. You want me to request it? Yes, please. I waited in the corner of the room for 15 minutes while he pulled the footage onto a small screen. When the video played, it was obvious. I wasn't there, not a single clip, not even a voiceover. Just wide shots of group events, sound bites from others. But not me. The only place I existed was in a brief crowd scene, barely visible and blurred at the edges. You can't crop a person's existence, unless you plan to. That realization sank lower than any insult ever could. Back outside, the wind had picked up. It was sharp against my face, but I barely noticed. I wasn't just erased from a spreadsheet. They'd been deleting me frame by frame, year by year. The walk back from the archive office cut through the quad, and with every step, I started remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. Not just what was happening now, but the first time it had happened. 13 years old. A middle school writing contest. I had written a personal essay titled, "This is Why I'll Never Be Enough." It wasn't dramatic, just honest. I wrote about feeling like a placeholder in my own home. The essay won the district prize and was set to be published in the regional paper. It never was. My father had made a call, said the piece was emotionally inappropriate and unhelpful for family image. In its place, the paper ran a fluffy poem by Celine titled Spring Blossoms. When I'd asked why, he didn't lie. He didn't even soften it. We don't share things that make us look unstable, sweetheart. I remembered how my voice had caught in my throat, how I'd nodded like I understood, even though every cell in my body wanted to scream. That night, I stayed up rereading the essay, wondering if I'd gone too far by being truthful. I hadn't. They'd just been planning to delete me long before I realized what that meant. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. It was Vera. The name alone gave me pause. My aunt, my mother's sister, someone I hadn't heard from in months. Her message was short. Found something your mom saved. Didn't want it buried with her. Attached was a scan of a handwritten document. My essay. My original essay. At the bottom, in my mother's looping cursive, were the words, "She writes because she can't say it aloud. Don't let anyone take that from her." I stopped walking. Right there, on the sidewalk. Because in a single image, my mother had handed me back something I hadn't even known I'd lost. I got home and opened a new folder on my laptop. Pre-pattern suppression. I didn't need more reasons to be angry. I needed receipts. I pulled in everything: emails from teachers, deleted announcements, screenshots, this scan from Vera, and the metadata from the media room. It wasn't just about what had happened this year. This was a pattern, a structure, and I'd been trained to smile while it happened. You either walk inside your story and own it, I whispered, recalling Brené Brown's words, or you stand outside and hustle for your worthiness. I was done hustling. Later that night, I opened the scan of my essay again and read the last line aloud, not caring that no one was there to hear it. I don't want to disappear. I want to matter, even if it makes people uncomfortable. I highlighted that line. And as my own face stared back at me from the dark screen of my laptop, I whispered something that didn't sound like pain anymore. It sounded like truth. Turns out, they'd been editing me long before I ever hit publish. And if they edited me, maybe they thought I'd never find the raw version again. That sentence looped in my head like a faulty track as I pulled into the driveway of the Grath estate. It had been 3 days since Vera's email, since I found the essay, since I admitted to myself, this was never about a graduation. This was about inheritance, not the kind written in legal trust documents, but the kind you live in silence to protect. I was told this meeting would be about paperwork clarification. That was the phrasing. The kind of polite code my father's world ran on. Everything unpleasant got softened with professional language. You weren't cut out. You were reassigned. You weren't silenced. You were realigned with priorities. The house looked exactly as it always had. Not a leaf out of place, not a window smudged. Everything preserved to look lived in, but untouched. Like grief had skipped this place entirely. The only hint of time passing was the faint mildew near the front porch tile, probably ignored out of pride or blindness. A housekeeper opened the door. I nodded, didn't wait for her to announce me. I knew where I was going. The study still smelled like aged wood and cold leather. My mother's favorite lamp was gone, replaced by a minimalist brass fixture that looked like it belonged in a hotel. She used to read in that corner every evening, socks mismatched, always half a cup of tea left behind. Arthur stood near the window, his back to me, hands clasped behind him. A gesture that was part military, part patriarch, all performance. "We need to talk about the mess you're making," he said without turning. I stepped into the room. I didn't sit. "You erased me." He finally turned, slow and deliberate. His face was unreadable, but his voice was ice. "We protected you from yourself." I let the silence breathe between us. "Families like ours don't air out rot," he continued. "We contain it. You chose to rot in public. That makes you the shame." There it was. Not shouted, not whispered, just stated, like fact. He didn't raise his voice. He never had to. He spoke with the authority of someone who'd built a life around knowing no one would challenge him. I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. My silence wasn't submission. It was strategy. I wanted him to keep talking. But he didn't. He walked around the desk and sat down, signaling the conversation was over, as if I'd just been corrected and would adjust accordingly. Instead, I turned and walked out. It wasn't until I reached my apartment that I realized my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from restraint. My phone buzzed just as I kicked off my shoes. A LinkedIn notification. Celine Grath has updated her profile. Co-author, thesis on political optics in crisis regions. My heart stuttered. I opened the page. There it was. The title I'd spent 9 months drafting, revising, researching. Word for word. She hadn't even changed the formatting. I clicked through to the academic archive database just to be sure. Her submission had been entered 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. I picked up the phone and called Professor Linden. He answered on the second ring. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you," he said, voice tired. "You saw her profile?" He exhaled. "We were surprised when your name was pulled. We were told you'd stepped back under family pressure. The committee moved forward, assuming it was your decision." It wasn't. I know that now. After we hung up, I opened a folder on my desktop labeled Academic Integrity. Inside, I dropped the screenshots, Celine's profile, the timestamp, my original research log. Then I drafted an email. Subject: Formal complaint. Unauthorized academic reassignment. To University Ethics Board, BCC, MC, my lawyer. Body: attached. You'll find documented proof that Celine Grath submitted my thesis work under her name. Submission was made 6 weeks ago. I am the sole author of this work. My name has always been on it. It's time someone else proved otherwise. No closing signature, no pleasantries, just fact. That night, I opened the folder where I'd been storing my keynote drafts. I deleted them all. Every paragraph, every outline, every sentence shaped to appease an audience that would have never heard me anyway. Then I opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, "This is not about being invited back. This is about never letting them forget why I left." I wasn't angry anymore. I was operational. And if the record speaks for itself, then I just need to hit play in the right room. I was wiping down my kitchen counter, not because it needed it, but because sometimes motion was the only thing that kept me from spiraling into stillness. That's when the message came in. Vera, short, blunt, just like her sister had been. "I found it. Come alone." V. There was no explanation, no greeting, but she didn't need to say more. I knew exactly what it was. 2 hours later, I was driving through New Haven's back roads, following the turns toward Vera's cottage like muscle memory. I hadn't been there since the funeral. That day, she'd stood in the back pew, quiet, ignored. Arthur hadn't acknowledged her presence, and no one else had dared to. Her place was tucked between a nature reserve and a dried-up stream bed. Ivy climbed the siding like it knew better than to wait for permission. The front porch groaned under my step, but the screen door was unlocked. Vera opened it before I knocked. "You came." "You said you found it," I replied. She stepped aside, no small talk. "In the attic, inside a box marked Lily's Things. Thought it was just old scarves." The living room was dim, filled with heavy silence and the smell of dried lavender. She handed me a small wooden box. Inside were 2 things: a sealed envelope with my name in my mother's familiar handwriting, and a tiny cassette labeled in fading ink, "To my youngest, when they try to silence you." "She knew?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "She knew," Vera said. "She left a trail. Just not one they ever wanted you to find." I didn't ask why she waited this long. We both knew timing was everything in this family. Speak too soon, and you're dismissed as unstable. Wait too long, and you're forgotten. Vera placed a small player on the table. I inserted the cassette, pressed play. The static cleared, and then her voice, softer than I remembered, but unshaken. "Isolde, they will call you dramatic, difficult, disrespectful, but you are none of those things. You are unmanageable by design." I felt something crack open in my chest. I knew they'd try to contain you. That's what they do. They wrap the strong ones in silence, call it tradition, call it respect, call it anything but what it really is: control. There was a pause, the sound of her turning pages. "This is the full trust document. Your portion, my instructions, my voice, in case they ever tried to erase me too. If they're hearing this, they already have. So I guess it's your turn to fight for what's rightfully yours." The tape ended with her humming, a lullaby she used to sing when I had trouble falling asleep. I hadn't heard it in years, but it dropped me right back into a nightlight-lit bedroom, wrapped in sheets too small for the weight I carried. I looked at Vera. She was already unfolding another paper. "She tried to file this a year before she passed. A clean transfer of your share, no cosign from Arthur. And it was denied. Blocked. He claimed instability, said it would be irresponsible." I read the document slowly. My mother's signature sat steady and sure at the bottom, dated 1 month before her final hospital stay. I pressed my thumb to it. Not for verification, for connection. When I got home that night, the city lights felt different, like the quiet didn't scare me anymore. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. New folder, matriarch file. I added the audio file, the scanned trust document, a photo I kept tucked in my drawer for years, my mother sitting on our back steps, pen in hand, notes scribbled in the margins of her book. In red ink, above her notes, she had once written, "She's not the quiet one. We are." I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my email. Subject, attached, audio testament. Trust dispute body. She knew. She left proof. Let's talk options. I hit send. My mother didn't raise a rebel. She raised a record. And tomorrow, they'll realize it wasn't a bluff. It was a brief. When I woke up the next morning, my mind didn't stall. No haze, no pause, no pacing across the apartment, wondering what to do. I moved like I already knew. I brewed coffee I wouldn't drink, opened the blinds halfway, sat down at the kitchen table, and pulled out the envelope Vera had handed me, the one with Mom's handwriting. But I didn't read it again. I had enough. I had what I needed. I opened my laptop and laid out 3 files across the screen. My locked education account screenshots, the email access logs I'd quietly requested weeks earlier, and the scanned authorization form transferring my graduation trust fund to Celine. A document with my name at the bottom. Only I never signed it. The signature was laughable. The slant was wrong. The loops didn't match. My E had always curled up, a habit Mom teased me about. This one hooked down like a copycat trying to pass a quiz they never studied for. They didn't even try to mimic my loops, I said aloud. It didn't feel like a joke. I created a new folder on my desktop and titled it Counter-Strike. Then I printed the trust document, highlighted the signature, added a sticky note on top. Forgery. I dressed, plain and neat, pulled my hair back. No makeup. I didn't want to look like I was performing. I wanted to look like a woman who came with facts. At the local courier office, I stepped up to the counter and handed over a manila envelope. To Arthur Grath. Urgent. Legal evidence enclosed. The clerk didn't ask questions. I paid in cash. Walked out. The sun was too bright for how cold the air felt. On my way home, I sent an email to Morgan, my attorney. Subject, attached, forgery document body. Please confirm timestamp of revocation and delivery. Within the hour, she replied. Confirmed. Signature is invalid. Legal risk is high if they push this to court. Suggest holding position until we review trust structure fully. I stared at the reply for a beat, then typed back. Don't hold. Draft the motion. They wanted a courtroom? We'll give them lighting. I meant it. By noon, I opened a new doc labeled Reinstatement Demands. I wrote without flinching. Thesis credit restored. Public acknowledgement of authorship. Correction of university records. Revocation of Celine's submitted trust documents. Official apology from academic board. I forwarded the doc to both the University Ethics Committee and Morgan. No commentary. Just the file. Just my name. The day passed with strange calm. I folded laundry, paid my internet bill, called Vera just to say thank you. She didn't ask what I was doing with the documents. She knew better than to assume I'd sit still. At 5:32 p.m., I got the delivery confirmation. Package successfully signed for by Arthur Grath. I imagined the moment, the weight of the envelope, the seal sliced open, the realization that I wasn't bluffing, that I'd learned their language, and now I spoke it better than they did. I didn't feel rage. I felt strategy. That night, I opened my private journal. Not the digital one, the real one. The one with pressed flowers and pages smudged from coffee and rain. I wrote one line. They banked on my silence. I invested in my memory. Then I closed it, locked it back in the drawer where I kept things worth protecting. The sky outside had turned deep purple, the kind of dusk that looks like bruised pride. I stood at the window and let it all settle. Not as weight, but as fuel. 12 hours ago, I folded. Today, I filed. Because I know how villains operate. They hide behind applause until the lights cut out. I didn't sleep that night, not from restlessness, but from intention. There was a focus that replaced exhaustion, a clarity that made every part of me feel sharper. At 7:43 a.m., my phone lit up with a message from a name I didn't recognize at first. "Did you mean to send that withdrawal email last month?" It was from a student assistant at the dean's office. I stared at the message, rereading it, fingers pausing mid-keystroke. I hadn't sent any withdrawal. Ever. I wrote back immediately. "Can you forward it to me?" A few minutes later, the file arrived. An email chain. My name at the top. My student ID. A message written in a professional tone. "Due to personal instability and a desire to preserve the dignity of the program, I am formally requesting to step down from all speaking roles effective immediately." They even used the phrase emotional volatility. I didn't know whether to laugh or smash something. Instead, I did neither. I saved the file, forwarded it to Morgan with no subject line. My phone buzzed again. Her response was swift, clinical. "This is manipulation. Metadata traces it back to a device registered to Grath Foundation PR." Another message followed seconds later. "Also, your login history shows unauthorized access using your credentials from a remote IP." Of course it did. I opened a new screen, traced the digital footprint. They hadn't just removed me. They impersonated me to do it. With tools I once trusted. With credentials I'd given them under the illusion of safety. Morgan's next message came through. "We can file this under cyber suppression. Want me to prep?" "No," I replied. "File it. Fully." I didn't want leverage. I wanted exposure. The day moved on with robotic predictability. I went through emails, added the forgery to the folder labeled image tampering, drank tea that had gone cold. By late afternoon, the universe decided I wasn't done for the day. The caller ID just said, "Caleb." My thumb hovered over the answer button. It had been 8 months since we last spoke. Not because of a fight, but because silence had settled in like fog between us. And I let it. "Hey," he said, voice shaky. "I owe you something." I said nothing. I need to tell you the truth before it ends up in court." Still silent. "Your dad, he offered to pay off my student loans if I walked away. Quietly. Said you were becoming a problem. That it was better for everyone if I just left." He didn't beg. He didn't even sound proud. He sounded like a man who just found out he was a pawn. "I told myself I was protecting you from them. But really, I took the bribe." I let the words hang in the air for a while. "Thank you," I said eventually. "That's more honesty than I ever got from my own family." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since the day he left. I hung up. No yelling, no closure. Just an updated entry in the growing list of truths I hadn't asked for, but needed to log. I opened the voice recorder on my phone. Pressed record. "Loyalty bought is loyalty bound to break. That's not betrayal, that's accounting." I saved the file and titled it, Invoice 1, Emotional Debt. An hour later, I sat at my desk and started writing something I never planned to post, but needed to create anyway. To those wondering why I vanished, I didn't. I was edited out. Below the sentence, I attached 3 files: the forged email, the digital trail metadata, and a short audio note of myself reading the lines Caleb admitted were scripted. No commentary, no hashtags, just the truth with timestamps. I scheduled the post. Midnight. They like to operate in silence. I'd return the favor, with documentation. Before bed, I stood in front of the mirror. Not to admire anything, just to look myself in the eye. "They turned love into logistics," I whispered, "but I'm the one keeping the receipts. If they wanted a scandal, they should have checked who they cast as the villain. And once the truth is public, power starts to panic." The next morning, I walked through the stone corridors of the administration building like I had nothing to lose, which, in truth, I didn't. If anything, I had receipts. And receipts, in the right hands, rewrote legacy. I requested the registrar's building entry logs. I didn't expect ease, but I was polite, firm, and precise. The clerk blinked at me, unsure of how to process a student requesting evidence like a journalist. Just need verification on who entered the registrar's office on April 6th, I said. You can redact everyone else's name if needed. An hour later, I received a forwarded clip from security. Low resolution, blurry around the edges, but unmistakable. Celine, walking in, alone, holding a red file folder labeled Ven, I. She had on her public version smile, the one she used in interviews and brunches with donors. I stared at the still image, then saved it into the folder on my desktop named Manipulation Confirmed. I leaned back in my chair, cracking my neck just slightly to the side, as if shaking off an invisible collar. Then came the notification. Google Drive, shared with me anonymously. Subject, you need to hear this. A voice file. I hesitated for maybe a second, then clicked. Arthur, I don't care how you do it. Erase her before she realizes. Use the dropout line if needed. No one wants another family drama in the news cycle. Handle it. Another voice, probably legal counsel, muttered something indistinct. Arthur again. Frame it like burnout. She's always been sensitive. Makes it easier. I didn't cry. Not anymore. I opened my editing app, dragged in the audio file, added the screenshot of Celine. Then I drafted the post. Text first. When they call you ungrateful, play what they said when they thought no one was listening. Underneath, I attached the security image, the full voice recording, a scanned note, for every girl told she imagined it. Hashtag? I thought for a moment. Then typed. Erased by design, I hit post. Then I went silent. My phone buzzed for the next 2 hours nonstop. Comments, messages, private stories from people I hadn't heard from in years. A former professor tagged me. I always knew she was being written out, never had the guts to say it. Another from a university ethics officer. I resigned in 2022 after watching this happen too many times. Thank you for speaking. I didn't respond to anyone. I just watched the numbers climb, and then fall into rhythm. Not viral hysteria, but momentum. A steady wave, undeniable, unspinnable. Later that evening, I sat at my desk and recorded a message. No face, just voice. They built a legacy on silence, I said. I'm just giving it back the voice it tried to bury. Then I received the call. Unknown number. I let it ring twice, picked up. Is this Isolde Ven? Yes. This is legal counsel for Mr. Grath. He'd like to explore options for quiet resolution. I didn't laugh. I didn't pause. Tell him I don't settle. I show receipts. I hung up, then walked to my window. The city looked the same, but something inside me didn't. The footage was grainy, but the truth? Crystal clear. But maybe some graduations happen when we step out of the frame and into the fight. I didn't move for several minutes after that call. The view from my window hadn't changed. Brick buildings, fire escapes, shadows of pigeons fluttering across rooftops. But the feeling inside my skin was different. Still, certain. That stillness was broken only by my phone vibrating on the countertop. Lether graduate, 1M shares. The notification pulsed again. DMs, tags, pings. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly knew my name again, and not because I showed up in a family holiday card, because I showed up in their feeds, their group chats, their conscience. A former classmate from my freshman ethics seminar posted, "She was the smartest person in the room, and somehow they still tried to erase her. Let this be a lesson." A faculty dean posted a neutral message, the kind they issue when the storm's too big to deny. "We are reviewing our archival access and authorship protocol moving forward." They didn't say my name. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. That afternoon, I got an alert from a digital archivist I'd met once in a metadata workshop. "Hey, your photo's missing from the 2020 Service Award banquet uploads." I stared at the message. I opened the university's digital gallery, scrolled to the frame I knew by heart. Gone. In its place, Celine. Same angle, same background, same award plaque. Her smile was wide, shoulders pulled back. She looked polished, intentional. I clicked View Info. Metadata said the upload had been updated 6 weeks ago, a switch so clean it left no trace. Unless you knew what used to be there. They didn't delete me, they replaced me. Like I'd only been a placeholder until the more agreeable daughter was ready to step in. That night, news outlets reached out. Most of them were digital publications, independent voices. But one of them was national. Legacy. Major reach. I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't need a mic to be loud anymore. An independent journalist posted an op-ed that gained traction fast. We don't just erase daughters from frames, we erase women from history. The piece was titled, The Grath Family's Two Daughters, One Legacy, and the War to Own It. I didn't read the comments, but I saved the article, filed it in a folder titled Public Record. That same evening, I received a message from Mr. Carlyle, my old AP Lit teacher. I wanted to say something back then, he wrote. I didn't know how, but I see you now. I didn't reply, but I screenshotted it, added it to my acknowledgement post-fact archive. The next day, I found myself sitting alone at a cafe downtown. It wasn't a place I normally went. Too loud, too crowded. But something in me wanted to hear voices that weren't curated. The news was playing on a silent screen above the counter. Headline: Graduation Controversy. Family Scandal Challenges Ivy Image. And there I was. Finally not invisible. My face, full, center, not filtered through someone else's story. People noticed. I caught glances, a few whispers. But no one said anything directly. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting it go lukewarm, letting the noise settle around me like ambiance rather than threat. My phone buzzed again. A shared Google Calendar notification. Subject: Joint Mediation, Grath Family, VR, Ven. I tapped View Details. Date: Monday. Location: University Legal Boardroom. Time: 9 odd a.m. I stared at the event title for a long moment. I used to dream of graduating in that building. I never thought I'd litigate there instead. And when you stop letting people write your ending, you finally start your own. Monday came gray and cool. The kind of weather that didn't ask for attention, but demanded stillness. I walked into the legal wing of Brown University wearing navy slacks and a pressed white blouse. Simple, unassuming, sharp. No makeup, no jewelry. Just me and the facts. The boardroom wasn't dramatic. It was sterile. Cold white lights, an over-polished table, bottled water with labels peeled off. The nameplates sat evenly spaced. Mine read, Ms. Isolde Ven. Arthur and Celine were already seated across from me. Arthur had his hands folded like he always did when playing defense. Celine kept her eyes down, but her nails were freshly done. No one said hello. The university's legal representative began. This meeting has been scheduled to address the formal claims brought forth regarding academic fraud, cyber interference, and familial conflict intersecting with institutional procedure. He turned toward me. Ms. Ven, please proceed. I slid the folder forward. Its title was embossed in bold. Reassignment Timeline. Property, Intellectual, and Identity. Inside was everything. Dated, time-stamped, signed, confirmed. The fake email, the voicemail from Arthur. The CCTV still of Celine with my thesis file. The LinkedIn screenshot. The submission discrepancy logs. All the dots, finally connected. My attorney summarized. This isn't a sibling rivalry. It's impersonation supported by institutional failure. What began as family conflict became administrative manipulation. Celine finally spoke, voice trembling, too polished to be unrehearsed. I wasn't trying to steal anything. I was just helping manage optics. I didn't flinch. Optics are what you polish when you're hiding rot. Arthur remained quiet. No apologies. Just his classic neutral expression. Trained detachment. The university rep shifted, looking visibly uncomfortable. Then one of the board members cleared her throat. "There's one more item to be addressed." She pulled out a printed email. "From Dr. Linwood, tenured faculty, Department of Political Studies." She read aloud. "To whom it may concern. I apologize for remaining silent during the reassignment process. The withdrawal of Isolde Ven's thesis was flagged, but I failed to inquire. I now believe that was a mistake." There it was. Not a parade, not a confession, just a sentence that cracked the wall. Silence followed. Then the panel began deliberation. When they returned, the verdict was direct. The authorship of the thesis will be officially reinstated to Ms. Isolde Ven. Celine Grath's submission will be withdrawn from academic record. A beat. The university will issue a public acknowledgement of mishandling. A non-disclosure agreement has been prepared. "No," I said. The room paused. "I'm not signing it." The rep blinked. "Ms. Ven, it's a standard offer." "I'm not interested in standards. I'm interested in memory. This doesn't get buried." Arthur's jaw tightened. Celine looked like she might cry, but I didn't feel sorry. Not anymore. The meeting closed with an awkward shuffle of papers. Chairs scraped, the door opened. We all stood, but no one spoke. At the exit, Arthur stopped. His voice was low, flat. "You're really doing this?" I paused beside him. "No." "You did." I looked him in the eye. "I'm just undoing it." I walked out without waiting for a response. The hallway outside was empty. Just me, my shoes clicking softly against the stone floor. The hearing ended, but for once, I wasn't the one being edited, and I didn't need their permission to be permanent. The ride home after the mediation wasn't triumphant. It wasn't anything, really. I kept the windows rolled down, letting the wind fill the car with air that didn't feel recycled. There was no music, just the hum of tires against pavement and the dull ache behind my temples, reminding me that truth, even when spoken, takes something from you. By late afternoon, I was back in my apartment, standing in the center of the living room, not entirely sure what to do next. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even exhausted. What I felt was clean, like whatever version of me that had needed their recognition had been scrubbed off in that boardroom. Then my phone pinged. A message from Bryn. "Can we talk? I didn't know. I want you to hear it from me." I stared at it longer than I meant to. Then I replied with a simple, "Cafe on 6th, in an hour." She was already waiting when I arrived. No filters, no staged angles. Just Bryn, hair in a loose bun, hands clenched around a coffee cup, shoulders curled slightly inward. "I thought you opted out," she said as soon as I sat down. "They told me you didn't want the pressure, that you were overwhelmed. I believed them." I didn't interrupt. "I didn't know until I saw your post, the audio, the photo. I didn't know what to say." I waited. I only realized the truth when the university emailed me, saying I'd been removed from the program credits. It didn't make sense at first. But then, I looked back. I saw what I didn't see before. "I'm sorry." I let the silence stretch. "You didn't steal anything," I said, calm. "You were handed something I built. That's not the same." Bryn looked down. Her lip trembled, but she held it. "Do you forgive me?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. Forgiveness assumes I'm still waiting on it. I'm not. She nodded slowly. There was no drama, no tearful apology, just the sound of chairs scraping the floor as she stood and left. I didn't watch her go. Later that night, back in my apartment, I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed, "Closure doesn't come from their apology. It comes from knowing you never needed it to move." I uploaded a photo I'd taken months ago, a soft shot of my graduation gown draped over the back of a chair in my living room. I'd never posted it before. Back then, it felt like a reminder of what was taken. Now, it felt like a reminder of what I reclaimed. Caption: "It was never the robe. It was who they thought could wear it." I didn't tag anyone. Didn't expect likes. At midnight, just before I turned off my phone for the night, a notification popped up from Brown University's official account, honoring graduates who overcame adversity, featuring Isolde Venn. No tag, no email, no warning, just a headline. Recognition doesn't erase erasure, but it does show who's still writing and who finally ran out of ink. And I didn't need their permission to be permanent. At dawn, the park was empty, except for the faint crunch of gravel beneath my shoes. I'd brought everything I needed: a fold-up chair, a thermos of tea, my old tripod, and a white envelope with my name in my mother's handwriting. The garden path was still wet from last night's rain, but the sky had cleared just enough to let the light break through in thin lines. I found a bench that faced the trellis, the same one Mom used to bring me to during finals week, when I couldn't breathe, when everything felt too big to name. I unfolded the chair, set the tripod up with quiet precision, and clipped my phone in. No audience, no podium, no music swelling in the background. Just me and morning air and the speech I never got to give. I pressed record. Then I opened the envelope. The paper inside had been folded 3 times. The ink was slightly faded, but unmistakable. You graduated the moment you stood alone without folding. The robe was never the proof. You were. I sat down, pulled my robe from my tote bag, and draped it gently over my shoulders. It still fit. It wasn't about size. I took a breath and began reading the speech I'd written 6 months ago. Good morning. I'm honored to speak, not because someone gave me permission to, but because I earned this moment with every step, every paper, every time I didn't let myself disappear when it would have been easier. My voice didn't shake. I didn't cry. I just read, out loud, to no one. And for the first time, that felt like enough. When I was done, I pressed stop, folded the robe back into my bag, poured myself a cup of tea, and sat in silence, letting the weight of it all lift gently, like fog rising from cold ground. Back at my apartment, I uploaded the video. No caption, no filter. By noon, the comments had started. The most real graduation I've ever watched. Her voice made it sacred. She didn't need a crowd, she needed truth. I didn't respond, I just watched. That afternoon, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter, addressed to Arthur. I didn't intend to send it. It began simply. This isn't to reconcile, it's to clarify. You didn't break me, you broke the illusion you ever held me. I used to think silence was strength. Now I know it's often survival. But not anymore. I don't need your version of peace. I built my own. I folded it, placed it in a clean envelope, labeled it, never deliver. Then I filed it away. A week later, I met with an academic advisor in a small shared office on the 2nd floor of the Student Services Building. No press, no banners, just 3 people around a table with coffee and folders full of startup paperwork. We launched a fund that morning, the Unedited Fund, designed to support students who've been institutionally silenced, those who were told their voices were too loud, too dramatic, too early, or too much. When asked why the name, I said, some stories don't need rewriting, just room to be heard. They nodded. No one clapped, and that was fine. Later that evening, I took my graduation robe out one last time. I pressed it carefully and framed it in a shadow box. On the bottom, in gold foil lettering, I placed a plaque. They tried to cancel the ceremony, so I created the moment. I hung it by my desk. The robe still fits, but I outgrew what they tried to dress me in.